Hi, my name is Jennifer, and today I want to help you identify what runs on your trailer battery versus what requires shore power to run. On a recent video, we discussed what you actually need to start dry camping, and one of the things that you needed was to understand where the power comes from in your trailer and what is powered from the battery and what is powered from shore power. But figuring out what is powered on the battery versus shore power could be a little confusing for some people, so I wanted to dig into that further and help explain exactly how to identify that. So you don't need to understand electricity to figure this out. This is going to be really simple, and by the end of this video, you're going to have a very easy way that you can use to identify what runs on battery power in your trailer. Okay, so let's just start with the basics. At a very high level, let's just go over how the power works in your trailer. So there are two different types of power systems in your trailer. You have the 12-volt power, which runs off of the battery, and then you have the 120-volt power, which runs off of shore power. So that's the power that requires the trailer to be plugged in to be able to use that stuff. So you have one system that uses the battery, and then you have another system that requires the trailer to be plugged in. In general, the battery system runs the basic power features in your trailer, and the shore power, the plugged-in power system, runs the items that you'd be used to using at home. So it's more of the household items versus the basic trailer items. Now, how can you tell what in your trailer uses which of these two systems? So, in general, if it looks like a standard household outlet that you see around your house, that is going to use shore power. Whereas the basic items like USB ports, lights, and fans, those are going to run on the battery. So if it looks like something that you could use at your house, you're probably going to need the trailer to be plugged into shore power to use that. Now, of course, there can always be exceptions to this. It's possible for a household plug to run off the battery using something like an inverter. It's also possible for a USB outlet to not run on the battery if it's connected to a device that is then plugged in to shore power. So sometimes there's a longer path of power and it's harder to identify what is actually controlling the power to what you're seeing. So how can you find out for sure? The best way to be certain that it works off the battery is to unplug your trailer. So before you go, while you have your trailer in front of your house or in your driveway, keep it unplugged and test anything that you want to use while you're dry camping. If it works in front of your house, then it will work while you're dry camping. If it doesn't, then you know that you need to have a plan for that. Just taking the time to unplug your trailer before you leave and check anything that you plan to use is going to be the best way to know for sure if you'll be able to use that or not. So like I said, there are exceptions that sometimes aren't obvious. We have in our trailer a pop-up tower, and on it, it has USB ports. We assumed on our first dry camping trip that we'd be able to use those USB outlets. What we didn't realize is that entire tower with the standard outlets and the USB outlets, it's all plugged in to one standard household outlet underneath the bed. So those USBs don't get any power from the battery and they do not work off grid. So if you want to be certain an outlet will work for you while you're dry camping, then before you leave, unplug your trailer and check it. Now, another way that you can kind of get a clue on if something is running off of shore power or battery power is by checking your converter. So in your trailer, you'll have a little area with a converter box, and on it there will be some fuses and breakers. So in our trailer, this is in the kitchen towards the bottom. Now, if you pop that open, anything that uses a breaker is going to require shore power. Anything that uses a fuse is going to run off of the battery. So that's another way that you could kind of get an idea as to what's running on the two different power systems. Of course, this relies on those being properly labeled, which might not be the case. So it might not be very helpful. You might just see breakers and fuses and not have any further indication as to what it's powering. But if it is labeled, then this is another way that you can get an idea as to what powers your different parts of the trailer. Now, there are some items in your trailer that are kind of gray areas with how they're being powered. So there's some items that you either have an option of how they're being powered or they're being powered with multiple sources. So let's go over a couple of those now. The first is the refrigerator. So depending on what kind of refrigerator you have, it could be powered in all different ways. So if you have a 12-volt refrigerator, then that means it's powered with the battery. So a 12-volt refrigerator is going to be powered with the battery. If you have a two-way fridge, if you have a fridge that can be powered by two different sources, such as propane and electric, then that will give you the option of how you want to power it. So the best option while you're dry camping with those refrigerators is to use propane. That's what we like to use. The other option, the electric option, is going to require shore power. It uses 120 volt power. There are all different kinds of fridges and they could be powered using different sources. So that is something that you want to make sure you know what kind of fridge you have and how it's powered before you leave, because it could use battery, it could use propane, or it could require shore power. And it's also possible that there's an option to let you choose the power source that makes most sense in that moment. Now, to figure out what options you have, I would take a look at the refrigerator. It should have some kind of indication on it. On ours, it has gas and auto as an option, so it lets us choose if we want to only use propane or if we want to use electrical hookups while we have them. So just take a look and make sure you know what the options are for your refrigerator. Next is the furnace. The furnace uses multiple types of power. So it requires propane to run, but then the fan on it uses battery power. So this is good to know that if you're using your furnace, it not only will use propane, it also will use some of your battery. The next is the water heater. The water heater, you'll be able to choose what power source you want to use. So that is one that can either use propane or it can use electricity. So if you're plugged into shore power, you can use the shore power to power the water heater. Otherwise, you can use propane. So that's good to know. Just make sure you understand how to use propane while you're dry camping so you're not relying on the shore power for your water heater. So it's just good to know that some items in your trailer will use both power systems, and that's completely normal and just something to be aware of. So the real takeaway here is if you are wondering how to figure out what in your trailer runs off of the battery, then unplug your trailer before you leave and take a look. Check what you want to make sure you use and see if it's working while you're unplugged. There's lots of rules of thumb about what will work and won't work, and you can go by that, but the best way to know for sure is just to test it. So I hope this helped give you a little bit clearer idea of how you can determine where the power is coming from in your trailer to help make a plan so that you are prepared when you're dry camping. Thanks for watching and happy camping.